So the idea behind this was that we had a session, it must have been 6 weeks ago now, and we talked broadly about data in FM, data and AI in FM. People seem to really enjoy it. We got feedback from maybe 10 or 12 people that said what we'd really love, we're all in similar positions to what the guys were talking about, what we'd really find useful is some discussions about how they actually brought these projects to life, how some of the stuff that they were talking about conceptually was actually brought through from ideation to building a business case, and in some cases to implementing and the kind of results that we're seeing. So this is the follow-up session. We've got Sarah and Wayne on that will introduce themselves as we run through this, but just to say that they operate opposite ends of the spectrum, let's say, in terms of the organization that they're working at. I'm going to leave it at that actually, because we'll get into that as we go through. So Sarah, I'm going to talk to you first. Can you just give us a quick 2 minutes on where it is you work, what it is you do there, and the type of organization it is generally?
Yeah, hi. Oh, hi, Graham. Hi, yeah. Morning, everybody. So I work for the London Stock Exchange Group. We are a financial organisation, obviously, mainly. I think that we'd call ourselves a data and tech company now, like many large financial institutions. My role here is Global Workplace Experience Director. That's a new role in the organisation, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the explanation of the case study. But during COVID, we merged with Refinitiv, which is part of Thomson Reuters, leaving us with a property portfolio, a hugely, vastly mixed array of buildings, about 130 properties globally. Wow. And we've about 30,000 colleagues that work with us and about 5,000 external colleagues that work with us every day. So it's a huge portfolio.
Okay, cool. So hopefully we're going to run through the whole life cycle of an analytics project in your organization. I've given you a bit of a homework to go away and come back with one. So can I start by asking you about where the conception of this particular project came from? How was it born? And what initially did you think were the kind of outcomes you were looking to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in workplace, and thinking about workplace productivity and how the workplace affects organisations for nearly 30 years. So it's a huge passion of mine anyway. But essentially, once we did merge, and after COVID, the exec and the rest of the world was talking about our workplaces. We want workplace excellence. We want workplace experience to be amazing. We need to attract talent. All of those good things, attract people back into the office. The issue with that very quickly wore off, because unless you can prove that with statistics, with data, it's really difficult to have those business conversations.
Of course.
Get investment into those. Now, the issue we have is that we talk about things like productivity, and we talk about friction-free, and we talk about all those great things. But my mission, and still is my mission, is to bring that together in one score. Basically, I've got to present one score to the exec, which we're now calling our key experience indicator. And how do you turn all of that stuff into proper measurements that you can actually measure your baseline, where you are now, you've done some stuff, and how it's got better. And we talked about that hugely on the last call, about it's that impact, it's the so what bit that is really important for me and for my organization. So that's how it kind of started, really.
Right, it's about moving past where a lot of people's analytics projects fall off, isn't it? Which is the analyzing part, right? A lot of people see that as kind of job done. It's about taking that analysis, turning that into actions, and it's those actions that then start to have an impact on the business, right? It's about how do you move past where a lot of people get stuck.
Exactly. And it's about that bit of like, how do we know we've got there? And, we all talk about journey. Everybody knows about workplace journeys now, and mapping your workplace journey. No organisation can do everything. Nobody's got a magic capital wand to spend capital and change everything. So what we've done is really, really focused on those things that are critical to our employees, and I'll kind of go through that a little bit in a minute. But obviously we've had some challenges around that. But it's really about honing in on where you're going to get the biggest buck for your money, actually, in terms of time, resource, money, all of those things. What is going to make the biggest impact to our colleagues? That's what essentially we've had to do.
Okay, so how do you turn that idea, that concept, those initial set of dreams into a business case that's going to get buy-in from the execs that need to buy in for you to have a successful project, for you to get it off the ground, but then for you to drive it through with all the change management stuff that needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we've built a blueprint for globally. We've tested it in London, and we'll go out to the rest of our buildings with it. And the way that we've done it, and I'll kind of show how we've done it through there, is, it's difficult to build business cases if you can't prove the case, if you can't prove what impact it's going to have. So this is all about building a framework operationally that will show that we can remove the friction from workplaces. And we can remove the friction by doing a certain number of things. We talk about everything in NPS, and we'll go through that in a little bit. But the NPS score is Net Promoter Score, and everything in our organisation, even with our customers, is driven by that Net Promoter Score. So we have promoters, we have neutrals, and we have detractors. What we've done in here with the measurements is focusing on why the measurements are they are, and how we can turn the dial by removing that friction, the detractors, and all of that. Therefore, what we can do is prove to the exec that we are now contributors and we're promoters of the organisation and enabling people in the organisation to have their best day because we've removed the friction. That's what this is all about, and it's very complicated.
So you start the project with that idea of being able to evidence it. So I think that the trap a lot of people find themselves in is they'll run an analytics project, and then at some point, 6-12 months down the line, they'll be asked to prove the value of it, right? And then they're scrambling and trying to pull together those numbers. But what we're talking about here is the ideation of this project has evidence built into it. The whole business case is built on the evidence you're going to ultimately provide at the end, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think Graham will go through it later, but the whole evidence and what we've done with our dashboard and the actual actionable items part of it and how it affects the score is all done on is really traceable and trackable, so that if the organizational strategic objectives change, like they have from return to office to 2 years later, 3 years later, where it's all about growth and cost saving, as we've had that conversation, Graham, organizational priorities shift. And unless you've got that in one place and you can really look at all of your priorities and say, right, that one's now on the back burner, we're going for this one. That's what this has all been about.
Got it. Understood. So if we jump forward a bit to the project being implemented, I'm really interested in a business of your size and geographic, how geographically diverse it is and how spread out it is. How do you handle the change management process? Because what we find here is the projects are only as successful as the people that buy into them. And in buy into them, we don't just mean the execs buying in and giving us the green light. We mean the operational folk buying in and actually using the system, right?
Okay, cool. Okay, Natalia, do you want to bring up my slides? Everybody, I apologise because I don't usually use slides. And I have only got a few, but I just think they do kind of share exactly the story that we've been on and how. Sorry?
We love a slide.
Yeah, I don't actually, but we've got them. So, how we've kind of brought in this from the executive level globally, and then how we've kind of implemented, how we're kind of like embedding it into BAU. That's kind of the journey that we're talking about. Now, we're not going to go through this slide. We all know this stuff. We all know that executives and everybody claims all of these wonderful things with their data. They claim that, 70% of companies are rethinking and redesigning their experience, that those companies that are doing it are 50% more. We've all got that data that we can look at, and it's about productivity effectively. What I needed to set out to prove was the so what. Again, what does that mean? So what, and how are we going to do that? Essentially, our new strategic objectives are growth, cost savings, efficiency, all of those types of things. So they are our new strategic directives. So what we had to really, really hone in on once we'd sold this to the exec was we had to go about finding the detractors that were those friction bits that we could remove from those journeys. So what we've basically done, and I'll go on to the next slide, is we agreed that we would tether everything in moments, in these key moments that matter. We did a huge amount of, I won't go through the whole thing, but we've engaged with a huge number of our colleagues on this to really understand in that journey from inception of saying, I'm going to go into the office next week, tomorrow, whatever, to I'm leaving the office and I've had a good day. We really did boil down. We did a lot of deep listening, we did shadowing, we did a whole number of other things. And we came up with these moments that matter, that really do matter in people's day. And within those moments, there are kind of mini moments, if you like, and we won't go through all of that because I can share that with people afterwards. But, you can see the type of things that are really important to people. What we then did with that was we broke that down into digital, physical or cultural elements, so we can track everything on that. The second thing is that we're leveraging our data. The most important thing is that we all know that a lot of these things are subjective. It's about a feeling. It's about, I think this, I like this, I don't like that. I've had a bad day today. My cat, has been sick. My husband's wonderful. All of those things, we know that. How can we turn all of those feelings into actual measurable elements of each of those moments? So for instance, in I Arrive, it will be waiting times in queues, it will be mystery shopper, it will be lift waiting times. They're real measurements in each of those things that we can measure on a monthly, daily, weekly, basis, and we can know that if we're doing that faster, better, all of those things, that score should go up. That is what we were basically what we're doing. But essentially, the main thing is that my exec and the executive board don't care about any of that happening in the background that I'm going to talk about. They want one score. I give them one score every month. I give them a KEI on some huge dashboard of organizational quality and quantity and all of this great stuff. I give them one score. So that's all I had to do, is bring that back to one single score. The most important thing that we're all talking about today is that continual improvement stuff. So it's not just doing that once and saying, right, we've got this score, where are we now? This is about a continual improvement and embedding a framework of a proactive management of that workplace. And by doing it the way we've done it, we are able to really target tiny things that make a massive difference to that score. So that's kind of the way, that's our kind of framework of what we've done. And we've got dashboards and everything. How do we translate this sentiment that we all know? People want their places to be welcome, efficient, friction-free. They want it to be accident-free. They want it to be optimal. How do we turn all of those feeling words, which are our critical success factors, they are what people say they want. How do we turn that into a measurement, into real data? So that's what we've kind of gone about doing. The global blueprint that I've put together, and this was my baseline, was that we've got these 5 moments that matters. You can see that each of those have a KEI score to them. They've got KPIs that are now embedded into our contract and will be embedded into our new contracts. Each of those have a measure. So for I Arrive, there's 8 metrics that sit in there. So if you do really well in one, that's great. But actually, if the others are slipping, you're still not going to get a great KEI score.
Right. So
overall, our baseline was 6.96 out of 10, and our target is not 10. So in the NPS score, your target is about 8.5 to 10, and then you're in a promoter. Not everybody's going to be a promoter, and we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But the biggest point of this, and the bit with the data bit, is how you automate all of that. Because that looks like a lot of work to everybody. That's a big lot of churning of data, gathering of data points and all of that. So it's about how we automate that and how we get that to be just, all of those things, every month or every day. And on the dashboard, I can look at it daily. So the big thing, again, you can see the main scores down the bottom there, the number of colleagues that was in one building that we engage with, but all of those things. And essentially, I have 36 data points that feed into those five things. But more importantly, there's 5 strategic initiatives that come out of it that will affect bigger change. And again, that goes to our one KPI score. So if we go to the NPS, and this is a bit rudimentary, and I've taken it out of our dashboard, so it's never great when you take things out of dashboards. But the way we've done it in NPS has got promoters, neutral and detractors. The way we've translated that into FM is that we've got our I'm impressed. We're never going to wow everybody. I don't want to wow everybody every day. A lot of organisations do. I believe that wow is only wow once. You know, we need to impress everybody daily, and that consistency across all those buildings is key. You're doing a good job. So that grey area, the neutral, isn't bad. We're doing a good job. We're doing what we're meant to be doing. And that's really good as well. Or I'm frustrated. So what, again, we're focusing on is those red bits. What is in those red bits that we need to move out, change, do something about to put into the either grey or the green. And it's all about increasing the green. The big thing about this is giving the FMs, and you'll see it in a minute, a framework for decision making, and where you can continually monitor the things you're doing are having an impact, and you can directly monitor that. So it's really good. So it's again about removing that friction. You know, the great things we're doing in the green is good, and we share those as best practice. You know, people love this, so we're sharing it. What we do want to do is, again, eliminate all of those other things so that we can prove to the exec that we might not be able to prove, you know, we've made somebody X amount more productive, but what we can do is prove our contribution to the organisation. Because if your brain that I'm paying you for can spend 100% of its time focusing on what it's supposed to be for our growth and our cost cutting and our customers, then I can prove that I'm contributing to that. That's what this is kind of all about. So the way that I've gone about that, and it's very, very straightforward, is in every bit of the green, we know all of those promoters. We know what people say about the good things. We've heard about it. We've put a score to it. We've put a measure to it. And then those detractors, we've listed every single one and said we need to get rid of those. We've bucketed those into these strategic initiatives. What we've then done, and this is the interesting bit, and Graham, what we've talked about previously, is how do you turn that into a decision mechanism and into actionable items? So we've built this mechanism on a dashboard where every single item has got its critical success factor, which is its feeling. I want it to be efficient, or I want it to be quick, or whatever. We've put the recommendation of how we can achieve that. We've then looked at that initiative and said, how much would it cost? Is it gold, silver, bronze? You know, is it kind of our North Star, our blue sky thinking of where we want to be? Like maybe Microsoft Places would be, where it would organize our whole space for us, and the AI would tell us that, you know, I've got 10 colleagues coming in, you can use this building. All of these things, right down to tiny little things like we need to get our locker strategy right, so that everybody's got a locker when they need them. So there's huge array of things. So we've scaled them in terms of the impact on the score, the impact on our colleagues, the cost, and then you start to see that these have now been put into a tracker. So you start to see that it gives the FMs a framework for decision making. But more importantly, what it does is it gives us a discussion. It gives the FMs a way of building the business cases and having those business discussions with the site leads or business leads to be able to say, yeah, look, we can do that, but this is what it's going to cost and whatever. So it's given them confidence in that way of having that discussion. Those are now our kind of framework for that. It's also embedded in the job descriptions and roles and ways of working of our operations teams, and the KEIs for this and the KPIs are all in our contracts. So you start to see that it becomes that the experience that's most important to our people start to become embedded into the operations. It's also easily accessible, as we talked about earlier. Once you have that all on a dashboard and you have it in one place and you can add to it and it kind of grows, that you can change those priorities as you want to. I've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll just go through and oh, I've lost a slide. You haven't got my dashboard slide. Sorry. There is, I don't know why that's not in there. There is a dashboard slide that shows you all of those moments of man, how it comes up on the dashboard. It's like any other dashboard. You know, you can see where you can track the date. You can click onto it. It can tell you exactly what part of that moment is being a detractor or what part of that moment, you know, raised the scores that month. And I can look at that on a global level. But this is the bit that is that actionable items bit. So this is my dashboard for actionable items. So this shows all of the items for any one of the buildings, and thank you, Melanie, because she's done most of this. She's in the room with me. These are the targeted actionable detractors from each one of those moments and each one of those things. Now, some of those things are never going to come off this tracker. We need brand new lifts in this building specifically. Our lifts are so slow. The lift waiting times are a nightmare. We're never going to do that because we're probably going to move buildings or refurbish this building. But it means that it's in one place. It's all in one place, and we can track why that is a detractor to our iArrive score. So you can then see, I can click on any region, any building. I can see what bronze ones they've got outstanding. I can see what gold ones, and we can start to build our capital forward planning and our operational spend based on this going forward. So we could say, right, this year we can do these, next year we can do those, and these can change. So if that strategic objective changes, we can then just change the priorities on these to say, right, that's no longer a priority, this is now the priority. Okay, so you can see how that starts to kind of like, manifest itself. Do you want to go on to your final question, Dave?
Yeah, so I just wanted to wrap it up, actually. I think
I can't see anyone.
The interesting thing here then, what an incredible project start to finish. I don't think anybody could not be impressed by that. The question on everybody's lips is, of course, how successful has it been? Have you been able to measure its success? How is it perceived internally?
Yeah, perfect. So that does take me really nicely onto my last score. So this is just taking one thing. This has just taken one little thing in a very, very simple graphic to say that our arrival hit score was at 3.26. It's now in those, since May when we did the baseline. In September, that score has gone up to 4.6. And that is by literally targeting those red areas in that one area. Also in the visitor experience, it's by targeting that grey area and saying, well, everybody says we're doing a good job. What would it take to impress them? So now we've got that more green. You can see the green, and you can see that in our mystery shopper, for example, and all kudos to the front of house team here, that they scored 100%. They scored 5 out of 5 on every single element of that visitor experience, and that is really very rare for an external auditor to give them that in the industry. So you can see very quickly on one little measure, and I could show you this across my whole dashboard because I could spend a day talking to you all about this, but I need to let Wayne say some stuff. But you can see how that has changed over that time and how very quickly you can make a difference. But more importantly, I can see what's been closed out, and I can see the things that are still the detractors. And I know the things that are still the detractor is my lift waiting times and the locker availability. So, but they're bigger capital projects that we've had to make a business case about. So you can see how you can really easily manage this operationally and strategically. So
it's perfect.
And the big impact that it's had is that people have got an understood framework to make their decisions based on. It's made making those business cases and having those business discussions easier. I can have a discussion with the exec going, well, look, I can't do anything about that because you're not giving me, this. If you give me this amount of money, I can affect that. It also has given the FMs a kind of consistent way of making those decisions globally, which I think is really, really important. And the biggest thing is that now when I give the exec that 1 KEI score, they don't ask me about everything else. They just go, great, your score's at that.
The Holy Grail. The Holy Grail. The no more questions from an exec. Thank you very much.
Well, I obviously get lots of questions, but they've got a score that they can kind of relate to because they understand what's behind it. I'm not just giving them some magic waffle or a big long, they only need one score in a dashboard. And we're still working on the dashboards. All dashboards change and grow and evolve. So we're still working on that. But basically, you can see on one little thing just how much it has made a big difference.
Yeah, I love it. That idea of kind of a framework that is essentially a real-time cost impact trade-off matrix that's helping people understand where the traditional quick wins and low-hanging fruit are to start pumping those scores up, and what are the more kind of strategic, capital-intensive, long-term projects that can potentially move the needle a bit more, and being able to make a decision about which order they tackle those in. That's incredible. Cool.
Sharing. Thank you. That was
Thank you very much.
quick run through, but I hope that was.
It was great, super great. And actually, I know people take the people got different opinions on slides, but it's nice to break these things up. So, Wayne, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Sarah at the start, if you don't mind. When you work, what is it you do there? What type of organisation is it?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I am Wayne Young. I'm the lead for facilities management across DB Cargo. DB Cargo are a national leading rail logistics business. So we move many things by freight train and do some passenger stuff up to and including the Royal train. Our business is quite extensive. We've got circa 240 properties across the UK, all varying in different types of building as well. So we could have traditional historic railway property down up to new maintenance sheds and head office estates. So we've got a very diverse estate across pretty much everywhere in the UK.
Wayne, tell me about what type of business it is. Like let me give you the traditional to progressive spectrum. Where are you putting yourself?
We're very much at the traditional end of the spectrum.
Okay.
As you can imagine, our railway has been around for 100 plus years. And in many ways, our business is still very traditional to that extent. I would say that we're definitely a progressive business, that we are keen to look forward and develop the way we do our business, and the use of technology is very much part of that future. However, we don't forget our history as well. A lot of the estate is traditional and historic as well. So,
okay. So, within that framework of a traditional business that's looking to be progressive in the way they approach things, can you tell me about just maybe one of the projects that you're working on at the moment that relates to data?
Yeah, absolutely. So, data is, I think we now recognise within our business how important data is, and we've used it across multiple streams of our business to improve efficiencies and improve performance across the business. In particular, since I joined the business over a year ago, we're looking at how we can utilise it around our utilities management. So clearly, an estate of 240 properties, 3 different utilities, you're running into high numbers of utility samples. So we're looking at how we can utilise technology to capture that data very quickly, to identify kind of any outlying problems, so water leaks, additional consumption, tenant usage, those kind of areas, and then how we can utilise that data to drive better efficiencies in the future as well. So identifying areas where we can reduce consumption overnight, and how we utilise that to then drive bottom line saving figures.
Okay, so I hope this is a fair statement. You strike me as a kind of a change agent in a business like that, and I'm guessing in a traditional business you face different challenges as a change agent to the ones that Sarah had. So Sarah's got a blueprint and they know how to build their business cases, and it's all kind of tried and tested. I'm guessing your world's a bit different. How do you go about bringing people on your journey, Wayne, when you're trying to progress like this?
Absolutely, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges I have is in regards to implementing new technologies, bringing the business and the people within the business on the journey. So clearly, I think the important steps to that are understanding your stakeholder, so understanding kind of who they are, what makes them tick, i.e. what makes an executive tick is going to probably be more commercial as opposed to an end user who's looking for ease. So you need to look at those things. But likewise, you need to look at the future as well. So you need to start with understanding what you want to achieve. You need to understand your strategy, what that looks like, and then use the right bits of technology around that to develop the right data that then drives the right options, and not just going at it as we can do everything because absolutely, right now we could do everything, but it's actually what will make the biggest impact, what will offer the best opportunities for us as a business, what will be relatively easy to get through the door, to start that journey and start that understanding. So if I went to the business and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what Sarah's done and implement that in the business, people will just be scared and they'll run away, and I'll struggle to get anything through the door. Whereas actually, if I break it down into steps of, right, let's go in with this, let's attack that, it's much easier to do. And the people who are, it's easier to show the benefit of that technology as well, particularly to end users.
And what's your process for arriving at how you're going to order those things? Do you go straight to the top and look at the organizational strategic objectives and see if you can anchor to one of those, or do you kind of start from the things that you can see that you can affect and then try and draw a line to the strategy?
I'd say it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So I think in essence, it's about understanding the business, understanding what the direction the business wants to go. What do we want to be as a business? What's that vision? What's that goal? Then understanding what my team wants to be and aligning that to that. And then pulling out how we can use technology to deliver on that. So the utilities thing, it is born from the fact that as a business, we need to be able to be better at understanding our utilities, charging our utilities to tenants, but also making savings across our estate to offer better opportunity to develop our estate further as well.
Okay, so the technology actually is the final piece of the puzzle, if you like. It's not technology driven, it's challenge / strategy driven, and then working backwards to, what's the right technology to help us, overcome that challenge and drive the business forward.
Absolutely. And to anybody who asks me this question, it would be the same thing, because ultimately technology is the tool. You've got to choose the right technology to suit the solution you want. There is a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of different providers of technology out there, but you've got to find the one that fits your strategic goal.
So,
and in the last one we did, I think I made it very clear in terms of you've got to start at the beginning in mind. When you look at these things, you've really got to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve before you can start going into choosing that technology, because you could spend a lot of money on technology and achieve very little.
Yeah, I feel that. So in my previous life, I worked at some of the big data analytics software companies in the boom years when the big companies knew they needed to do something with data, and we'd get phone calls every day and somebody said, right, I need 100 users. I said, cool, what's the use case? What are you trying to achieve? He said, not sure. We just know we need to do something with our data. So I completely get that.
Yeah, technology is cool, right? And I think even down to the extent of 3-4 years ago, I was looking at robotic cleaners. Why was I looking at them? Because I found them cool, because they looked great. Yeah. It'd be a great opportunity for the business, but actually, did they achieve what I needed them to achieve at the time? Not really. And that maturity of, you've got to start with what you want to achieve, and it's got to be aligned to the business strategy. It's got to be aligned to the team strategy. But you've got to start there.
For sure. I'm going to jump forward and ask, and I think hopefully this is going to be valuable for the people listening, because this is some of the feedback we got. Can you give us your top 3 pieces of advice for getting progressive data projects off the ground in a business that you could describe as traditional? Because I'm sure a lot of people are sat listening thinking, my business is traditional.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not many businesses that are probably as forward thinking as Sarah's described, and I've worked for some. And when I previously worked for Just Eat, again, the business is a tech business, but there was still a journey to be taken with how we use technology within the built environment, because people just see the built environment as a janitor, a cleaner, a security guard, those kinds of type things. And I think the top 3, I've touched on a couple of them already. I think clearly, start with the beginning in mind is one of the probably main ones. You've got to understand what you want to achieve. You've got to understand what the people that are going to interact with that technology want to achieve with that. You've really got to build that vision of what that technology is going to do. And that leads quite nicely into understanding the stakeholders within that. You've got to understand what's going to make them tick. What's the things that they're looking for. In my case, a lot of our people are looking for ease of process. A lot of our end users are either managerial positions in working environments or are in working environments, and a lot of that work is quite industrial. So what they actually want is ease of flow. They don't want to have to be slowed down in doing their processes. So we need to understand what that looks like, but also we need to understand kind of what the people who are signing this off and the stakeholders that are involved in this are after. And in a business like ours, which is probably similar for most people on the call, is cost is quite key to a lot of this conversation, and understanding the benefit, the cost benefit, what does it save, but also the value of it. So what can it add for the future? So can a sensor that reads water temperatures, for example, as a key piece of technology that we see a lot of nowadays, that takes away the engineering element that needs to go and attend. It saves the money, but also it identifies where we've got issues, thus stopping a potential outbreak of Legionella and that kind of type stuff. So there's some real key bits around that. And then lastly, right back to that start with the beginning in mind, is what makes the business tick. What is the future of the business? What does that look like? And making sure that we're buying and purchasing and implementing technology now that's fit for the business in 10 to 15 years time as best we can. And I think that those are the kind of the key three things that I definitely look at when I'm looking at new technology in our business. Is, am I putting technology in now that's fit for the business in 5, 10, 15 years? And people that are going to interact with that technology, what are they looking for? How can I set up my sales pitch, for want of a better word, to make sure it ticks those things and make sure the technology meets their requirements? And lastly, what are we looking at in terms of this technology? What do we want this technology to achieve in the future? And yeah, thus making that very clear to the business and the exec of this is what we are achieving. And I found by using those 3 steps that it's well engaged by the business because they can see the flow out process.
Amazing. So we're talking about start with the end in mind always. Stakeholder needs, and that's individual stakeholder needs, right? Not stakeholders as a group. We've got different people that are looking to achieve different things from a project like this. And the technology needs to be kind of foundational for the growth that the business is looking to achieve. We can't be bolting things onto the top. We need to be, building a platform for growth.
Correct. Yeah,
perfect. Exactly. Amazing, Wayne. Thank you very much. If anybody's got any questions for Wayne and Sarah, either fire them in. In fact, do fire them in. And if we can get to them at the end, we will. Or if not, we'll distribute them individually and come back with answers or do some follow-up sessions. Graham, good morning.
Good morning, David. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me, bit of a cold.
So your position's slightly different. So you sit across a number of projects, and I know personally that you've been busy out and about in the world doing strategic impact workshops with lots of our new customers. I'm really interested in those because they tie in really nicely to exactly what Wayne and Sarah have both told us. Just give us a couple of minutes on what a strategic impact workshop is and what the idea is behind it.
Yeah. So first of all, David, I'd just like to say to Sarah, to Wayne, what cracking case studies in terms of 2 very different organisations, very different size of organisations, doing one right at the beginning of their journey, one very much more advanced in terms of their journeys, and I hope that sort of resonates with some of the people that are on the call anyway. So absolutely great. Our strategic impact workshops are pretty much what it says on the tin. we focus very much, as you said earlier on, in the old days, corporates went, we've got loads of information, we've got loads of data. What we need now is to hire a data team, buy some technology, and then work out what we're going to do with it. As we're moving forward, what we're discovering is that mid-sized organizations, and particularly functions within large organizations, so FM, energy, sustainability, those kind of areas, they don't have that blank checkbook approach that was typical of the corporates in the early years. So it is very much about building the business case. We developed a methodology with our clients, and by working with our clients over the last 6-7 years, where the first thing that we do is we talk about the strategic intent of that business. So not the FM team necessarily, not the sustainability team, the energy team. What is the business looking to achieve, and over what sort of time frame? And that's normally 5, 6, 7 key strategic objectives around growth, around cost reduction, around employees, around ESG, environmental, social, governance type information. And then we look at what the FM or the energy or the sustainability function is going to deliver to that. So what we're then doing is we're saying, how can this specific area of the organization, or if it is an FM provider, how can that FM provider deliver not only to their strategic goals of their business, but also to the strategic goals of the organizations that they provide? So how do we get that alignment, and what does that look like? What we'll then do is what we call line of business. And line of business is where we focus in on some ideas around initial key impact areas. So for Sarah, very much about people happiness, well-being in the environment. Although I know that Sarah's done a load of stuff already on the normals, the HVACs, the jobs, the cleaning, all those kind of things. But one of those line of business was very much focused on delivering for the people who use the organization. With Wayne's area is very, very different, because Wayne's on the start of the journey, so it needs to be the ones that make the most impact. So what we then look at is exactly that, is if we've got 5 or 6 ideas that we think can deliver across not just the FM strategy, but also deliver to the overall business strategy, we can then start working out, okay, well, what's the cost implication of that? How quickly could we put that together? What data already exists that we can use to empower that? What data doesn't exist, but we might need to bring it in at some point in time? And how would we present this to the audience that needs to benefit from it? And that's what we call personas. And those personas could be the CEO, who just wants one number, or it could be a area manager who wants to know what's going on with his 12 buildings, or it could be a facilities manager at one area who just wants to know, well, why is my water bill so high? Why is my electricity bill so high? Why is my gas bill so high? And they want to consume data in a different way. So some of them will want a very clear DNA of excellence type of dashboard that says, these are my 12 key measures that I'm measuring. And one of them doesn't want to see a dashboard at all, because he doesn't even want to log into a set of dashboards. What he wants is an email or a text or something fed to his phone that says, there's a problem here, you should probably go and have a look at it. So the whole concept of the impact workshop was around, what impact do we need to deliver? How will we value that impact? And we do create a value for those impacts right at this early stage. If we did that, how much benefit would it deliver to the business? How complex is it to make that happen? So we have a impact versus complexity matrix. And then finally, what personas are going to consume and benefit from that in order to make actions actually happen? Because off the back of this, you need to do something. You can't just look at a dashboard and go, oh, that looks okay. And we've heard that from both Wayne and from Sarah. Sarah's getting her results and then going, how do I improve? How do I improve? How do I improve? Wayne's going to do exactly the same. How do I improve? How do I improve? How do I cut those costs? How do I cut those things out? And in order to do that, it needs to be delivered in a way that people can consume it without interfering with how they work. And that's the auspice of a strategic impact workshop.
Yeah, so just to jump, what's really interesting to me is that kind of almost an end-to-end methodology you've just described there echoes exactly the process that Sarah described and exactly the process that Wayne's 3 tips, right? It's all combined into that single thing. So we're all going about this in the same way. I see that methodology almost as like a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is what are the business's strategic imperatives, removed from anybody's personal drivers or any particular lines of business. What is the business looking to achieve over the next 10 years? Next layer down, how can the individual lines of business affect those business strategies? What is it that they can do on a project level to try and impact those strategies? And then which personas are going to be actually using this thing within those lines of business? How are they going to be interacting with it? What does their day-to-day look like? What kind of learner are they? What's their data maturity? How's their data literacy? Do they just want text? Do they want to be getting into the weeds? If you give them a dashboard, is that a license to procrastinate? If you just give them a single indicator, is that enough? And that kind of top to bottom approach is how you would describe Datore, starting with the end in mind and then kind of working backwards through that process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then working with that over a period of time gives you the increase from a maturity perspective. So you will have someone who says, I just want to see an indicator. But then when they see that indicator, their next question is, well, why? Why is that happening? What's gone on? And they will want to drill down and answer that question themselves without having to go back to the IT department to answer it for them. And then when you take that to the next level, we take it to the so what. And the so what is, so what do I do next? So what are you telling me in terms of what does that mean for the future of this organization? So you can't just look at historical figures and up to present time and say, yep, we're doing great. You have to actually then start looking, okay, well, what does that look like next? And what does that mean to us next?
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, what action should I be, what is this telling me and what action should that be driving? Because that's exactly what we're looking for. We don't want any kind of flabby metrics in there, right? Everything we're measuring for a reason, and we should be looking to drive an action out of the backside of it. And let's be real about it. Sometimes those actions or those metrics aren't actually the metrics that are going to deliver impact, but that's about the process of iteration, isn't it? And that's these projects, you should always start with the end in mind, but they also have to be organic in the way that you iterate them, because quite often the question that you think you're setting out to answer isn't the question that's actually going to deliver the impact, right? So you need to be nice and agile, and you need to be able to iterate, and you need to revisit these things on a regular basis to make sure you're kind of squeezing as much out of it as possible, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And what you'll find with that as well is that agility needs to also be part of the technology as well. So if something isn't working for you, have the ability to ditch it and change to something else, or have a partner that will say, okay, that's not working, so we'll try a different tool, or we'll add a different X or Y or Z in order to make it work for your organization.
For sure. the last thing I was going to ask is, and we kind of covered it already, to be honest, but I'll ask the question anyway. How do Datore go about doing the thing that both Sarah and Wayne mentioned in terms of evidencing the success of the project? So I heard that we're identifying what success looks like up front. How does that look like as you iterate through the process, so that you're kind of proving out at different checkpoints?
So what we do during the strategic impact workshop and during the line of business workshops that we then follow that up with is, what will this deliver? And we try and get that to, as best we can, a pounds and pence or a measurable outcome. It will give me 8 additional hours, 50 additional hours. It will save 1 head count. It will reduce electricity consumption by 3%, which is worth £450,000. They create then the targets that activity, that line of business activity, drives towards, so that we can say this was a success because, or this was a partial success. We only saved 250 and we thought we were going to save 450. Where's the other 200 going to come from? So we try as best we possibly can to actually create real numbers and real measures. And as Sarah said, even when you're dealing with traditionally soft elements, it is possible to actually create hard measures against traditionally soft elements. And we're seeing that very much at the moment with another client who is a property owner and management organization, and they have 8 different FM providers, but they are looking at how they can measure and reward those different providers based on sentiment of the people using those environments. So some of them are very hard measures, some of them are still hard measures against soft perception.
Perfect. And a lot of what we do...
I think Sarah wants to say something, but she's on mute.
I'm not on mute now. I've found my mute button. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into that, but the sentiment thing is really important, because what we don't want to do, we agreed, or it was one of our intentions early on, not to ask people. We don't want to survey people. We don't want to ask them how they feel about their workplace. So what we've done with that group that we got together in the first place is set a baseline measure on their feelings, and then said, if we dial these things up by here, would you then score it X? So we've got a real measure against an original sentiment. We are looking at sentiment analysis actually in terms of AI. We are looking to do some sentiment analysis to overlay onto our measurements. But the sentiment thing and turning it into a physical measurement is you can do it very simply.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, Sarah, because that's very contra to what an awful lot of corporates and large organizations are doing. They implement these questionnaires and questionnaires upon questionnaires, and then they'll have supplier questionnaires, they'll have client questionnaires, they have customer, they have user, they have employee or colleague questionnaires. And then they'll drive everything around those. But like you say, one day someone's happy, the next day they're not.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about, as long as we've eliminated all the detractors, every other element, whether their manager's pissed off or whether they've had an argument in the morning or the train journey's been bad, as long as we know we've eliminated all our kind of friction and our detractors, we're doing what we need to do for the organisation. We can't mandate or control all of those other things, and we don't want to ask people, because you don't get a good representation from survey. We did a survey last year, which we had as a baseline, and we have got quite a lot of feedback from it, but it didn't give us what we needed.
Yeah, I can see that. I think the other thing with regards to the hard measures, the soft measures, a lot of the time we're also not 100% on what the very best outcome is, but a lot of what we do is about proving and disproving hypotheses, right? It's about somebody having a theory about where we need to get to, and then using the data and the process to try and disprove that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, that was a good long chat, I think. I don't know if Natalia's around and managing things around questions. I haven't seen anything.
No.
Often they get distributed.
A lot, actually, yeah.
Often they get distributed afterwards. I don't know if anybody's got any parting words of wisdom for us before we sign off and let the people go and get their lunch. Graham, you're usually good for this.
Yeah, you are.
This juncture.
I'd try and say, if you're going to take anything away from this session, probably 3 or 4 things, which is, firstly, make sure your business has a strategy, and make sure your data analytics strategy is linked to it. Write that down. Write down your ideas of how you can link to that. Write down who you're going to impress and how you're going to impress them. And you've got 90% of a business case.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, very good. All right, guys, thank you very much indeed for your time. And I'm sure we'll be doing this again at some point. Sarah, hope your presentation goes well this afternoon. Wayne, pleasure as always. Graham, I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody, thanks very much.